Now I would like to introduce you to the chairman for the day, Sourabh Sharma. Sourabh Sharma from SKIM, he is specialized in understanding consumer behavior. Sourabh graduated with engineering and marketing and MBA from Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania and Rotterdam School of Management. Sourabh has experience in brand management and product development at L'Oreal. We find there are many people here who actually have some experience with L'Oreal as a big company. And he helps multinational companies better understand their users by active work in social media research, and he is also is a leader of some seminars and webinars. I personally attended some of his webinars, and which was very useful for me as well. And so let's help me to welcome Sourabh Sharma.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the InnoCos conference. I think I met and spoke with everybody yesterday, so I'm really glad that Irina started this day off on a comic note because I hope to sustain the comedy during the day. Anyway, so we learned quite a lot yesterday. We learned a lot about an area we're passionate about, cosmetics. We learned a lot about social media in particular. But overwhelmingly, I think we learned a lot about how and why we should listen to our consumers. So in a brief 10-minute intro, I'm going to share with you my passion for learning about consumers in cosmetics and in many other areas, as well as why it's important to listen to our consumers, since ultimately, all of us work with brands that cater to consumers. So, as we know, I have quite the diverse background. Educationally and also work-wise. I'm very happy that there's quite a few L'Oreal alumni and current L'Oreal folks here. I've also worked in management consulting, and now I work at SKIM, which is a consulting and marketing research firm. So this really helps me together to understand consumers. One thing that I told a lot of people yesterday was that I'm very much into social media, and just to elevate that point, here are all the social networks that I'm very active on. Feel free to add me on anything, follow me on anything. My alias on the internet is @Sourabh. That's also my Twitter name. So if anyone has any questions about any of these, let me know. I'm very stalkable on the internet, as you can see. So feel free to stalk. And now I'll stop talking about myself. So in cosmetics, what is it that we do to understand our consumers? We watch them. We trend watch. We try to understand what our consumers are doing so we can get an inspiration of how to cater to them. We communicate to them in many ways. I mean, this is the crux of marketing, to communicate effectively to your consumers. And one thing that we also do, but I feel like we should do a lot more of, is listen to our consumers. It's one thing to just watch them. It's one thing to communicate to them, but it's very important to listen to them, to listen to what they're saying. There's different ways in which you can listen to your consumers. I mean, this is where choice modeling, ethnographies, product testing, and everything that goes on in a typical product life cycle comes in play. However, an area that I have gotten very interested in over the last few years is social media. And I find social media to be a very interesting way to listen to your consumers because it's a candid way. It's what consumers are openly talking about on the internet. So if they're talking about you and your brand, you really need to grab this because it's up for grabs. And so this is where the field of social media research is born, which is what I'm going to talk to you about briefly. Just to elevate that point, and I know we've had a lot of facts and figures yesterday, 90% of people trust online peer recommendations when they're buying something, only 14% trust advertisements. And how much budget do we spend in advertising? Quite a bit. So this just goes to show it. So the two things that I've worked with, primarily at SKIM with social media research, is how to monitor and assess your brand and how to craft a strategy based on your consumers. I'm going to show you a quick example of each of these. So the first one is how to monitor and assess your brand. And the case study here is from Nivea. And we have somebody from Nivea here who I did ask the permission of sharing this study with that I had done. So this is a chart which shows you 3 lotion brands and lotion personal care and just personal care brands that we tracked over 1 year in 2011. The vertical axis shows you the percentage of the online conversations that were positive. So for instance, in January, 50% of Nivea's conversations were positive. And this is, everything that I say is back-end work that I've done, but positive means they were extremely positive. The rest of them were neutral or negative. It's very interesting to see how these vary across time. However, what's interesting to note is that in August, there's a dip with Nivea, and a very big one at that, and nothing happened to the competitors. So what was going on here? Now, in case you didn't know, this is, first of all, only US consumers, but what happened in August is Nivea's men's skincare line launched this ad. Let's take a minute to look at this and see why it caused overall sentiment on the internet to drop. This ad obviously has some undertones that are not very positive. Re-civilize yourself, as well as look like you give a damn, as well as the image, which in the US does not work, where the US in particular is more about diversity and such. So this ad that was launched met with a lot of negative feedback, like the day that it happened. Some of that is things like this that I got off the internet. Is this ad offensive to anyone out there? This ad has to be trashed. I'm not buying a Nivea product as long as this terrible ad is on air, and I won't be using Nivea aftershave anymore. Let's see how they do without my uncivilized dollars. So naturally, when you do something like this, when any brand launches an ad or a product, it's immediately on the internet that you see the effect of that. The sales data will come in later. The distribution and how well it's doing on the market will come in later, but the internet captures the emotion immediately. This is what your consumers are thinking. If we zoom in a little more into August, where this happened, we see that on August 18th is when they launched this ad. That's when sentiment overall dipped the most. This is, again, percentage of positive conversations. On August 19th is when Nivea issued an apology, so that's when the sentiment was at an all-time low. After that, it slowly crept upwards. What does this show us? Does this show us the power of an apology? Does this show us that consumers have a short attention span? Does it show us that strong brand activities by the marketing team are indeed helpful to bring sentiment back up to where it should be? Or does this just show us that Nivea is a strong brand that can do with such hiccups? Perhaps you can ask our Nivea expert here, or you can talk to me about other things that we did with this study, but I'm going to leave it at that. Now, I'm going to show you how to craft a strategy based on your consumers from social media. But just so that I'm not bashing any brands that are present here, I'm going to go outside the beauty category to explain this to you. Now, we are on 56th and 7th Ave. And many of you may have taken a cab or walked here and walked past the area that has a star on it. In case you didn't know what this is actually the Hershey's store. Now, if anybody doesn't like chocolate, let me know, and I can reignite that passion in you. But I love chocolate, and so I think everybody does. And let's just quickly show you a study that I did on the chocolate category, which shows how you can actually use social media data online to craft a strategy for your brand. Sounds unreal, but it's possible. This is a chart which shows you online conversations in 1 year of 6 brands of chocolate: Twix, Snickers, Hershey's, Kit Kat, Butterfinger, and Toblerone. On the bottom, you have the conversations ranging from less positive to more positive. So Twix was talked about less positively overall in the year, and Hershey's a little more positively. On the vertical axis, you have brands that are talked about less passionately and more passionately. So less passion means that I like a brand. More passion means I love it. Similarly, if you look at the other way, less passion means I dislike it. More passion means I absolutely hate it. So luckily, nothing is in that hate quadrant. But what we do see is that Hershey's, for instance, is positively talked about, but with moderate passion, whereas Toblerone, Butterfinger, and Kit Kat are talked about with high passion. What we also see is that the size of the bubble represents the volume of the conversation. So if you were to look at this as a volume share type of metric, this is just what people are saying on the internet. So people are talking about Hershey's the most on the internet in the period of 1 year. They're talking about Toblerone the least, but Toblerone is talked about most passionately. So this has a lot of learnings for these brands, and I'm going to just take you through what Hershey's has done or could do with this. If you track similarly to earlier, the sentiment and the positive conversations across a year, you see that Hershey's has peaks around Halloween, Christmas, and Valentine's. Why is this? Because Hershey's launches a lot of activities and campaigns around these holiday seasons that resonate well with consumers. So this is something they can leverage. Whether they know it or not from their sales data is something different, but the internet tells them that immediately. This rather complex looking chart is actually very informative. What we have in the words going down on the vertical column are different functional elements that are attributed to chocolate. So chocolate should be tasty at the top, it should be new, it should look good, all the way down to it should smell good. These, with back-end algorithms from SKIM, are ranked in order of importance on the internet. So on the internet, people find that in chocolate, taste is the most important thing. Bear in mind that on the internet, we're not asking people anything. Like, there's no questions being asked. We're literally just getting insights from what people are saying openly. So this is quite insightful to get this kind of thing from that. On the bottom, as you can see, we have the brands arranged in increasing volume of conversation, moving that way. So Hershey's was the most talked about, Snickers next, and then Twix and so on until Toblerone. What you see here is that the green box represents that this brand has a strength in this attribute compared to its competitors on the internet in this category. So for instance, if consumers like to find tasty chocolate, the tastiest chocolate that they find or that they express on the internet is Toblerone and Butterfinger. The least tasty is Hershey's. Similarly, Snickers always comes up with new ideas. For those of you in New York, Snickers has a lot of advertising that goes around how it's a snack and how it's very cool. It's almost being replaced as an energy bar despite being a candy, and that's why it really boosts this new factor. So Snickers is known to be new quite often, and new is something that people are looking for in their chocolate. Hershey's, not so much. Hershey's does well in other things. For instance, people think Hershey's has a good smell, but scent is not a very important thing for chocolate eaters. They don't care about how it smells. They just want to eat it, so they want it to be tasty. So this kind of thing, based solely on the internet, solely on social media data, without asking consumers anything, is extremely powerful in telling Hershey's what its consumers like and dislike. Through a lot of such experiments, we have come up with a brand persona, which was shared yesterday as well, for Hershey's. Hershey's is talked about by young and middle-aged women. They talk about it mostly on blogs. So if Hershey's was to advertise and leverage online, they would use blogs. They purchase it in grocery or mass retail stores. Again, we're not getting this sales data anywhere. We're simply getting this because people are talking about this on the internet. Interestingly, even though it's the women who are buying it, it is mainly eaten by their men or their children. Their children eat it in school, and they all eat it at home on holidays and other occasions. The holidays parts make sense because earlier we saw that Hershey's does well around the holiday period. But it's just interesting to see how this product travels across a consumer's daily life. And this, again, is something that you may not find out if you were asking consumers how they do it. You may not find out from the many, many metrics that we use in marketing to validate ourselves, but you can easily find it on social media data. So overall, I think what I like to do is go beyond just social media listening. A lot of social media is just about listening to what's on the internet, but it's important to take action, and so Hershey's can take action on this. And if any of you want to talk to me about this, I have the entire analysis already done. I gave a webinar on it as well, so it would be interesting for anyone to see what the results were. I can share those with you after. However, social media is important for concept generation, to get product development ideas, to understand what triggers consumers, what the needs, and more importantly, what the gaps are on the market. What campaign material is needed, so what can you include in your campaigns to target consumers better? Because think about it, what's on the internet is what the consumers are saying. If they're saying in majority something that they like, it should clearly be in your campaign. Measuring campaign effectiveness, like we did with Nivea, and more importantly, coming back to the theme of this conference, uncover ideas for the next innovation. So just ending with this, that we should definitely watch what our consumers are doing, we should communicate with them, but overwhelmingly, we should listen to them. So with that, let's kick off the day 2 of InnoCos. Please use our hashtag if you're tweeting. You can also mention SKIM Group and me where needed on the internet. And with that, let's move to our first speaker today, which is our keynote speaker, George Edouard Diaz. Just a quick mention of George, which is that He's going to talk about a topic that is very close to me, the age of digital. As you know by now, I'm very much into everything digital and social. And he's going to speak about how L'Oreal embraces it in what is fondly called the seductive world of beauty. With a background that includes working in a plethora of beauty brands, including Garnier, all the way to becoming VP of Marketing at Vichy, it will be a pleasure to hear from George-Edouard Diaz, who is currently SVP of the e-business at L'Oreal. He has the accomplishment of launching L'Oreal's first selling sites and L'Oreal's first corporate website in 1997. So this I found really interesting in a conversation with him yesterday because he has been through the e-business for over a decade. So he has been through the dot-com era and seen the ups and downs, and it was very interesting for me to hear from him that when the dot-com era was happening, it was only the luxury brands that were starting to come on the internet. And this was the time when I would happily go on the internet and see if my favorite brands were there yet. So I would type in benandjerrys.com, and voila, they had a website. Now that kind of thing is history because everybody today knows that they have a website, but back then it was not the case.